let's assume you're elected to the United States Congress this cycle, and you get the opportunity to introduce a piece of legislation. What would your most passionate piece of legislation to be introduced by you be?
That is an amazing question. I think that one of the biggest problems that we have in America right now is the notion of religious freedom bills. The idea that we are creating sort of safe havens for hatred in our country, whereby someone can legally discriminate. Whether we could legislate that, I think we could. Based on my research, I'm fairly confident that at a national level, that is something that is broad and applies nationally, where we could prohibit bills of that nature at the state level. That would certainly be a piece of legislation that I would introduce. But I would say the most important piece of legislation would again be an investment in the infrastructure of broadband in our country. We are not making policies that are indicative of the next 20 years. We're legislating for the next 2 months or the next 2 years. And so, we need to invest in technology that supports what our workers will need in the next 30 years or 40 years. The idea of a 2 gigabyte internet connection to your home, to your office. The kinds of innovation that will create, we can't even imagine that right now because the technology to do what we need to do isn't there. And then I guess one other important piece of legislation I look at is how we change what compensation and taxation looks like for major companies. I have to be careful because I work for a major company, but I think that it is absolutely absurd that you can have 20, 30, 40,000 employees in the United States. You can have the vast majority of your resources in the United States. You can have the vast majority of your financial infrastructure in the United States. But you are paying the majority of your revenue to a subsidiary in another country. It is, I have to be careful with the word I use. It's creating a tax haven. It's not right. If your neighbor was doing it, he'd probably be arrested. And we need to change that.
So would you call that a scheme to avoid taxes?
Good. I do think that if you create a company that's founded in the United States, and then you create a separate company in Ireland, for example, and you justify that with anything other than taking advantage of a tax loophole, I do think that's a scheme. I'm not afraid to say that.